Hi, everybody. Brian Norcross here with a 5 p.m. Eastern Time update on the tropical threat to the Gulf of Mexico, which is a significant threat. The threat zone ranges from the western Florida Peninsula around to Tampa Bay and even down to southwest Florida. The threats will be different in different areas depending on the exact track of the storm, but everybody there on the, let's say, from the Panhandle of Florida on down to the Keys needs to stay in close touch with the updated forecast, because the system is just developing, and as with all just developing systems, a plus or minus one direction or the other is very possible, in spite of the fact that the computer forecasts are really in amazingly good agreement, unfortunately, that this is going to be a major hurricane event for some part and maybe a significant part of the Gulf Coast of Florida. Here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center as of the 5 p.m. update. It's still called Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. Potential tropical means it's a possible tropical storm or potential tropical storm or potential hurricane. The cyclone is just a generic name for a low pressure system in this case. So the idea is that think of it being a potential tropical threat, and it is a threat to areas down to the south, but also especially to the state of Florida. So the estimated winds out there are 35 miles an hour, somewhere associated with this broad circulation. Moving to the north-northwest at 7 is their analysis, is up in this general direction, and there's the pressure coming down just a little bit. Hurricane hunters out there exploring right now to measure the winds and to look at the structure of the storm. And what they find is kind of a broad area of winds. The strongest winds are associated with these thunderstorms down in here. And we can see, looking at the satellite here, look at these clouds blowing that way. See those kind of wispy clouds blowing off? Well, that means that the upper level winds are hostile at the current time, and it's pushing the thunderstorms all over to the right side of the circulation. So they are forecast to let up as the storm moves kind of in the direction of the Yucatan Channel between Mexico and Cuba, and therefore the system is forecast to consolidate. We'll see if all that happens. That's what the computer forecasts all say. So that is indeed the expectation. Here's the cone as of the 5 p.m. advisory. You see the thinking is that it becomes a tropical storm tomorrow and consolidates and has nominally 50-mile-an-hour winds, and then intensification just begins. It kind of threads the needle there between the Yucatan Peninsula over here and Cuba over there. So it just heads on up that way, and by Wednesday becomes a hurricane. So when you see AM here, nominally that's 8 a.m., and PM nominally 8 p.m., plus or minus, of course, because none of this is exact, but just to give you an idea. So late on Wednesday, it's a hurricane heading into the Gulf under what are believed will be very conducive conditions for strengthening. And so the Hurricane Center has it up to a 115 mile per hour category 3 at the time that it is about to make landfall somewhere between just west of Panama City and Tampa. Obviously, Tallahassee is right in the middle of that. But the threat zone here, because the storm is going to be much bigger, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, but much bigger than this cone. So the threat zone is larger to the east of the cone than to the west, but the entire state of Florida is in the threat zone for impacts of some kind from this storm. And I know a lot of folks in Southwest Florida follow me and after Hurricane Ian, and they moved a lot of them from Southeast Florida, and you are in the storm surge threat zone. You're also going to get winds, probably not damaging winds, but you are in the storm surge threat zone. So we'll get to that here in just a moment. And then once it goes inland, because this thing is going to be booking along, if you see here where it's forecast to be Thursday morning, there is where it's forecast to be Thursday evening. So it's going to, so that's 12 hours, and then that's 12 hours. And so you see it's picking up speed as it goes. Now, there are a couple ramifications of that. One is that it doesn't lose intensity as fast as it moves north. So yes, Atlanta, North Georgia, Macon, conceivably even up into the upstate of South Carolina, Greenville, and eventually up into Tennessee will all feel effects of this storm. You could have 50 or 60 mile an hour gusts in the Atlanta metro area if the storm tracks, especially if it tracks a little to the west of the city, kind of through West Georgia. But the other ramification of it is that tends to, when the storm goes fast, that makes the winds on the east side spread out more. You have stronger winds coming around like this and like over here. So you end up with a bigger storm to the east on a fast-moving storm. And to the east of this storm track is the entire state of Florida. So everybody is going to feel this to one degree or the other. Obviously, the closer to the center, the worse the winds are going to be. And the storm surge is mostly going to be confined to the Gulf Coast, although there will be some water rise on the East Coast all the way along here, but it won't be dramatic. Although we have a king tide going, it's already flooding in some low-lying areas, so this will aggravate that at high tide. Now, here's perhaps the biggest concern about the way all this is coming together. What we have in the ocean, or in this case in the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf, and then into the Atlantic, is a flow of water that comes up here through the Yucatan Channel and then loops back and becomes the Gulf Stream. And this is why the Gulf Stream is warm, and this flow is caused by the circulation of the earth going around and getting the water flowing, and just because of the way that the land has ended up distributed through the eons, we end up with a flow that goes like this. And so the warmest water anywhere is right here in the northwestern Caribbean that this system is going to track over and in theory become Tropical Storm Helene right over in here. But that flow, let me go back there because I didn't want to go off that. That flow also goes up, and it can't make the hard right. So it goes up here, and it actually goes up like this, and it makes kind of a loop up in here, and then some of it sits up here. So the thing is that we have a pool, kind of a reservoir of extremely warm water that's extremely deep. So when the storm, in theory, the hurricane tracks over that, it stirs it up, of course, but it stirs up more warm water, and that can supercharge the storm. We saw that in Hurricane Katrina. We saw it in Rita. We've seen it in other storms over the Gulf of Mexico where they run over this thing called the loop current. Okay, so here are those models. Now watch as it goes north, goes through the Yucatan Channel, and you see all of the computer forecasts indicate it's going to go over the loop current. So we expect significant intensification in this period here as it's passing Tampa. If now the models you see are more or less down the middle of the cone, that gives us pretty high confidence in the cone, but the storm hasn't even developed yet, so exactly where the computer forecasts are going to jog one way or the other, we don't know. So we just need to be ready for that possibility. Now there's the consensus. The Hurricane Center uses that for the center of the cone, more or less. The consensus is a smart average of the best computer forecasts. So that's what they base their cone on, more or less in this case. Now this shows us some measure of the uncertainty in the forecast. And notice it has some lines over here. Over in here, west of the cone, it has there's one or two over here to the east of the cone. So the point is that everybody in that zone that I was talking about needs to pay close attention, and we'll let this settle down as the storm actually gets developed. Okay, so what's going on here with the winds? So here's what I wanted you to really make note of and why this is a concerning situation. So here comes the storm, and here we are Wednesday morning here. So it comes out of the Caribbean tomorrow. Wednesday morning, it's in the Gulf here. And look how far to the east the strong winds extend compared to the west. You see how big that is? And these reds are in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range for gusts. So notice some of the reds, even some of the dark reds over the lower Keys. That's why there is a tropical storm watch in effect for the lower Keys. In terms of the Keys, the lower Keys stick out closer to the storm. They're likely to get the strongest winds. So the tropical storm watch means that there is the possibility of tropical storm force winds. If the storm takes the track that we expect, then we expect tropical storm force winds will impact the lower Keys, and beginning on Wednesday would be the time. And most of the rest of Florida, it's just kind of getting a little gusty, and we feel it on the peninsula, but that's about it. All right, now we go to Wednesday evening. Now you see more reds. These are stronger gusts over more of Florida, but most of the system is still offshore because it's only still intensifying. If you look at these strongest winds up here, the yellows and the kind of light, almost white yellows, you notice that they're kind of close to the center here, and it's not really much of a donut because the storm is just intensifying on Wednesday evening. But then Wednesday overnight, now it's over that loop current. This is when the intensification takes place. So you saw the bright whites kind of stick out there. Look how much red there is all the way off the east coast of Florida. So these are pretty strong winds coming in here to the east coast and even the southeast coast, driving water against the coast. Like I said, we will see some water rise on the east coast. But on the west coast, now the water is being driven toward southwest Florida, toward Tampa Bay, and this is when we're going to get more, the water rise beginning along that west coast. So this is going to be overnight, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Then as the system goes north, that's going to continue depending on exactly where the geometry of this is. Do we end up with a system over there close to Tampa, or do we end up with a system that is farther out in the Gulf? So that's the uncertain issue that we don't know the answer to at this moment. So for now, we have the tropical storm watch in effect for the lower Keys. This will expand north. We'll end up with hurricane watches spreading up around the Florida coast. We'll have storm surge watches. There are already some storm surge guidance for emergency managers that the Hurricane Center has put out for the Tampa Bay area and on down around Charlotte Harbor, the Caloosahatchee, all along the southwest coast. So this is a full-scale hurricane threat that is heading toward the west coast and the Panhandle of Florida. The timetable is on Thursday. Remember, it's going to speed up from where you see it on the map right now and make landfall, we think, by the end of the afternoon, maybe early evening on Thursday on the current timetable. If it were to go closer to Tampa, it would come sooner. If it were to go a little farther west, it might take a little longer because it has more to go. And then into Georgia and on up all the way through Georgia, maybe South Carolina and points north as well. So everybody inland, plan for power outages, do all the things that we do along the coast to be ready, be alert of where you park your car and so forth. I put out a post today. You may have seen that just to get everybody going, if you're in the zone where the power might go out, is to get some Ziploc bags, fill them 3/4 full of water, stuff your freezer with those bags so you don't have any air in that freezer, and because it's going to take a few days for them to freeze. So what that will do is that will fill your freezer with ice. And you have two things. One is if the power goes out, it'll keep your refrigerator cold longer. Secondly, they will be water you can drink beyond whatever water you put in pots and pans, or you might have bottled water. So the variety of things you can do. Be sure you have taken your steps in this threat zone. This is a significant threat. I'll be on Fox Weather. We're covering this. We'll have this covered every which way. We're talking about nothing else. So if you don't know how to get Fox Weather, you don't have it on your TV, you don't have it on your phone, just go to foxweather.tv and there's all the instructions for how to get it on your Apple TV and your Roku and your Comcast and your Spectrum and your iPhone and your Android phone, and you can get it everywhere. It's free. You don't have to have a cable subscription. You don't have to have anything. And I'll be there, and we'll be there talking you through this and giving you the latest information. But I do want everybody to be sure and keep up to date with their local information, instructions, because this is going to require evacuations. This is going to require a lot of people to pay very close attention and to react soon, because it's going to happen fast. All right, that's our update for today. And of course, we'll keep up to date here and on Fox Weather.